2 pink lines. That's all it took to destroy Viva Morrison's world. She stood in her claustrophobic bathroom, the pregnancy test trembling in her hands, and tried to understand how this was possible. She was 29, a virgin. She'd never even let a man kiss her, let alone. How? Her voice cracked in the silence. How is this real? But the test didn't lie. The lines didn't fade. And somewhere in her body, something was growing that shouldn't exist. Outside, Chicago's bitter wind clawed at her window. Inside, the truth was even colder. 6 weeks ago, during a routine exam at a Manhattan fertility clinic, someone had made a catastrophic mistake. They'd switched her chart with another patient's, given her a procedure meant for someone else, inseminated her with sperm that belonged to Carlos Russo, a mafia boss whose infertility made this pregnancy his only chance at an heir. His only hope of survival in a world where dying without children meant his empire would be stolen by rivals. And when men like Carlos discovered mistakes, they didn't just fix them. They erased them. Completely. Permanently. If this happened to you, what would you do? Drop your location in the comments and subscribe, because in 3 days Carlos Russo is going to knock on her door, and nothing will ever be the same. 6 weeks earlier, Viva Morrison's life had been beautifully ordinary in the way that only hard-won peace could be. She woke every morning at 5:47 a.m. in her studio apartment in Bronzeville, not because she wanted to, but because the radiator clanged like a chain gang breaking rocks. The apartment was small, kitchenette against one wall, Murphy bed against another, bathroom the size of a closet, but it was hers. Every dollar of the security deposit, every month's rent, every stick of second-hand furniture. Hers. At 29, Viva had learned that ownership was survival. She'd grown up in Chicago's foster care system, shuffled between 7 homes in 12 years. Some families had been kind. Most had been indifferent. One had been cruel enough that even now, 15 years later, she couldn't sleep without checking that her door was locked twice. The system had taught her 3 things. Trust no one, depend on no one, and fight for every kid who couldn't fight for themselves. So that's what she did. By 7:30 a.m., she was at her desk at the Department of Children and Family Services, a converted warehouse in South Loop that smelled like stale coffee and institutional despair. Her cubicle was decorated with drawings from the kids she'd helped place. Crayon houses with smiling stick figures, thank you cards in wobbly handwriting, one watercolor that said, "Ms. Viva saved me," in purple letters. She had 43 active cases, 43 children caught in the machinery of a system that chewed up the vulnerable and spit them out broken. She worked 12-hour days, fought with judges who didn't care and foster parents who cared too much about the monthly check, and went home exhausted every night knowing she'd barely made a dent. The pay was terrible, $43,000 a year in a city where rent alone ate half of that. The hours were brutal. The emotional toll was crushing. But it was purpose. It was penance. It was proof that she wasn't defined by what had happened to her, but by what she did for others. You need a life, V, her friend Maya told her at least once a week. Maya Washington, her sister friend since their social work program at DePaul, the only person who knew all of Viva's scars and loved her anyway. I have a life, Viva would say. Work isn't a life. When's the last time you went on a date? 2019. Girl, that was 5 years ago. And he turned out to be married, so my track record speaks for itself. Maya would shake her head, exasperated and affectionate. Not all men are trash. Maybe, but I haven't met the exceptions. The truth was simpler and more complicated than that. Viva had built walls around her heart because walls were safe. She'd never been in love, never been touched with anything resembling tenderness. At 29, she was still a virgin, Not from religious conviction or fear, but from a bone-deep certainty that vulnerability led to pain. Better to be alone than destroyed. But Maya was persistent. In January, she'd shown up at Viva's apartment with a proposal that changed everything. There's a women's empowerment conference in New York next month. For days, all expenses paid. I got us 2 tickets through work. Say yes. I can't afford. It's paid for. The tickets, the hotel, everything. All you need is train fare and food money. Maya, I have cases. You have vacation days you never use. Take them. Come with me. When's the last time you did something just for you, V? Viva had looked around her apartment, the bills stacked on the kitchenette counter, the case files she'd brought home, the calendar on the wall with every day marked with obligations and no white space for joy. Okay, she'd said, surprising herself. Okay, I'll go. Maya had screamed and hugged her so hard they both nearly toppled over. So in early February, Viva Morrison did something wildly out of character. She used 5 vacation days, packed her one good suitcase, and took the Lakeshore Limited from Chicago to Penn Station. New York was overwhelming in ways both terrible and wonderful. Too many people, too much noise, too much everything. But the conference was transformative. Workshops on boundary setting, financial literacy, healing from childhood trauma. For 4 days, Viva sat in hotel conference rooms with 200 other women and learned that maybe, possibly, she deserved to take up space in the world. On the 4th day, Maya showed her a flyer she picked up in the hotel lobby. Look at this. There's a women's health initiative running free screenings at a clinic in Midtown. Full gynecological workup. No insurance required, no copay. When's the last time you went to a gynecologist? Viva had gone quiet. Healthcare was expensive. She had insurance through work, but the deductible was so high it might as well have been monopoly money. She'd been putting off her annual exam for 2 years. Exactly, Maya said, triumphant. It's free. You'd be stupid not to. So Viva went. The Elysium Fertility Center occupied the 23rd floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. Viva took the elevator up, feeling out of place in her Target cardigan and clearance rack jeans, surrounded by the smell of money, fresh flowers, expensive perfume, the kind of hushed luxury that made you whisper even when no one was listening. The waiting room was all marble and soft lighting, with chairs that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A receptionist with a French manicure handed her a clipboard with a smile that was professionally warm and personally empty. Just fill out the intake form, Ms. Morrison. Someone will call you shortly. Viva filled out the paperwork with the careful attention of someone who'd spent years navigating bureaucratic systems. Name, address, date of birth, insurance information, medical history, emergency contact. Then she got to the section about sexual activity. Currently sexually active? No. Date of last sexual encounter? Not applicable. Number of lifetime partners? 0. She checked the box marked virgin without hesitation. 29 years old and never been touched. Not from shame or religion, just from never finding anyone worth the risk. A nurse called her back, young, efficient, wearing scrubs with tiny cartoon hearts. Ms. Morrison? Right this way. The exam room was standard medical office fare. Paper-covered table, bright fluorescent lights, posters about cervical cancer and birth control. The nurse took her vitals, asked routine questions, and told her the doctor would be in shortly. Dr. Helena Chun was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and gentle hands. She introduced herself, explained the free screening program, and asked if Viva had any concerns. No, just the regular checkup. It's been a while. We'll take good care of you. The examination was routine, clinical, forgettable. Pap smear breast exam, questions about her cycle. Dr. Chun was professional and efficient, making small talk about the weather while Viva stared at the ceiling and waited for it to be over. "Everything looks normal," Dr. Chun said afterward. "Your results will be mailed to you in 2 weeks. Any questions?" "No. Thank you." Viva got dressed, thanked the nurse and left. She thought nothing of it. Just another item checked off an endless to-do list. 3 days later, she took the train back to Chicago. Back to her cases and her apartment and her carefully controlled life. Maya hugged her at Union Station. "See? That wasn't so bad. You survived 4 days outside Chicago." "Barely. Liar. I saw you smiling during the keynote speech." Viva had smiled. For 4 days she'd let herself imagine what life might look like if she wasn't always braced for disaster. If she could trust that good things didn't come with hidden costs. But real life didn't work that way. 2 weeks after returning from New York, Viva's period didn't come. First she dismissed it. Stress. Travel. Her cycle had always been irregular, 32 days one month, 26 the next. She was probably just late. But then the exhaustion hit. Not normal tired, but bone-deep fatigue that made climbing the stairs to her apartment feel like scaling Everest. Then the nausea, subtle at first, then overwhelming. She started gagging at the smell of coffee. Her breasts ached. Her emotions swung wildly between weepy and furious for no reason. By the 3rd week, terror had replaced denial. She bought a pregnancy test at the 24-hour Walgreens on 51st Street at 2 in the morning, paying cash and avoiding the cashier's eyes like she was buying something illegal. She drove home through empty streets, hands shaking on the steering wheel, and sat in her parked car for 20 minutes before she could make herself go inside. The test sat on her bathroom counter for another hour before she could touch it. When she finally worked up the courage, she peed on the stick, set it on the sink and turned away. She couldn't watch, couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the impossible question screaming in her mind. How could she be pregnant when she'd never had sex? The timer on her phone buzzed. 3 minutes. She turned back to the sink. 2 pink lines. Positive. Viva's legs gave out. She slid down the bathroom wall, still holding the test, staring at those 2 impossible lines like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Virgin. She'd checked that box. She'd never been touched. This was medically, scientifically, biologically impossible. Unless someone had made a mistake. The thought hit her like ice water. The clinic. The free screening. The professional efficiency of Dr. Chen's exam. What if something had gone wrong? What if they'd done something to her without her knowledge, without her consent? Viva grabbed her phone with trembling hands and started Googling. Can you get pregnant from a pap smear? Medical malpractice fertility clinic. Accidental insemination. The search results were sparse but terrifying. Rare cases of clinic mix-ups. Wrong embryos implanted. Charts switched. Lives destroyed by administrative errors. She was still searching when her phone buzzed with an email notification. Sender. Elysium Fertility Center. Subject. Urgent. Critical error. Immediate contact required. Viva's heart stopped. The email arrived at 2:17 a.m., 5 days after the test. Viva was still dressed in her work clothes, wrinkled blouse, coffee-stained slacks, researching impossible pregnancies with the desperate focus of someone watching their reality fracture. Her apartment was silent except for the radiator's metallic breathing and the distant sound of sirens on Garfield Boulevard. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it with shaking hands. The sender was from Elysium Fertility Center. The subject line made her stomach drop through the floor. She opened it. Read it 3 times. Each word hit like a physical blow. Dear Ms. Morrison, we are writing regarding a catastrophic administrative error that occurred during your visit to our facility on February 9th. Due to a chart mix-up, you may have received an unauthorized medical procedure. Please contact Dr. Helena Chun immediately at the number below. This matter involves legal liability and immediate medical concerns. We sincerely apologize for any distress this may cause. Viva's hand shook so violently she nearly dropped the phone. She dialed the number. It rang 4 times. A woman answered, the same receptionist from the clinic, but now her professional warmth was gone, replaced by barely concealed panic. Elysium Fertility Center. Please hold. This is Viva Morrison. I got an email about an error. I need to speak to Dr. Chun. Now. A pause. Too long. Too heavy. Please hold, Ms. Morrison. Tinny hold music filled her ear. Something classical and aggressively soothing that made Viva want to scream. She pressed the phone against her ear hard enough to hurt, pacing the small length of her apartment like a caged animal. Then a new voice. Older. Female. Terrified. Ms. Morrison. This is Dr. Helena Chun. I'm calling regarding a very serious matter. Are you somewhere private where we can speak? I'm home. Alone. What the hell is going on? Ms. Morrison, I need to ask you a question first. Have you experienced any unusual symptoms in the past 2 weeks? Nausea, fatigue, missed menstrual cycle. The bottom dropped out of Viva's world. How do you know that? Dr. Chin's voice cracked. Because during your visit to our clinic, your chart was accidentally switched with another patient's. You were scheduled for a routine pap smear and pelvic exam. Instead, she took a shuddering breath. Instead, you received an intrauterine insemination procedure meant for a different woman. The words didn't make sense. They bounced off Viva's brain like bullets off steel. You're saying you were inseminated with donor sperm, yes. Ms. Morrison, I cannot apologize enough for this catastrophic error. The staff member responsible has been terminated. But we have a very serious situation that requires immediate action. Viva couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. She slid down the wall, phone still pressed to her ear, and heard herself say, "Whose sperm?" Silence. Long enough that Viva thought the call had dropped. Then Dr. Chun spoke, and her voice was barely a whisper. Carlos Russo. The name meant nothing to Viva. Who is that? Ms. Morrison. Dr. Chin's voice dropped even lower, like she was afraid someone might be listening. Carlos Russo is the head of the Russo crime family. He controls most of the East Coast's organized crime operations, gambling, trafficking, money laundering. He came to us 3 years ago after he was shot by a rival family. The injuries left him infertile. That sample you carry was his only remaining viable sperm, frozen before the shooting. Viva's vision tunneled. She couldn't speak, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. That pregnancy isn't just a medical error, Ms. Morrison. It's a death sentence. Carlos Russo has a rival, Montana DeMarco, head of the DeMarco family. By Mafia law, if Russo dies without an heir, his territory passes to the next most powerful family. Montana has been circling for 3 years, waiting for Russo to die childless so he can take everything. I don't understand. I'm saying that baby makes you the most valuable and most dangerous woman in the underworld. You're carrying the Russo heir. Russo's only chance at an empire. Montana's greatest threat. Viva's free hand moved to her stomach, protective and terrified. So what are you saying? I'm saying you need to fly to New York immediately. Tonight if possible. We'll terminate the pregnancy, provide significant financial compensation, arrange witness protection until the situation stabilizes. But Miss Morrison, if Russo finds out about this before we handle it, he won't give you a choice. He'll take you. Take the baby. And if Montana finds out first, Dr. Chen's voice broke. If Montana finds out, he'll kill you to eliminate the heir. You need to move. Now, before anyone realizes what's happened. I can't just, I have work, I have cases. You have a target on your back. Dr. Chen's professional composure shattered. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Carlos Russo is not a man who accepts defeat. He's not a man who forgives mistakes. When he learns that his last chance at an heir is inside a woman he's never met, a woman who can walk away, do you know what he'll do? What? Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. The line went dead. Viva sat on her bathroom floor in the dark, phone still pressed against her ear, listening to the dial tone like a funeral dirge. Outside, the February wind howled against her window. And somewhere in Manhattan, 200 miles away, a man who'd never learned mercy was about to discover that his salvation had been planted in the wrong woman. Viva didn't sleep. Couldn't. She spent the rest of the night researching Carlos Russo, and every article made her blood run colder. Russo family consolidates East Coast operations after bloody territory war. Federal investigation into Russo syndicate stalls amid witness intimidation. Carlos Russo, the Ice King who built an empire on fear. The photos showed a man who looked like he'd been carved from marble and cruelty. Tall, dark-haired, sharp-featured in the way of predators. He was photographed at charity galas in $1,000 suits, shaking hands with politicians and business moguls, always with the same expression, controlled, calculating, cold. One article included testimony from a former associate who'd turned state's witness. Carlos doesn't yell, doesn't threaten. He just looks at you and you know that if you disappoint him you won't see it coming. People who cross the Russo family don't disappear in dramatic ways. They just stop existing. No bodies. No evidence. Like they were never born. Viva read until dawn broke gray and cold over Chicago. Read until her eyes burned and her mind couldn't hold any more horror. Then she called Maya. V? It's 6 in the morning. What's wrong? Everything. Viva's voice cracked. Maya, I need you to come over. Now. I can't do this alone. 30 minutes later, Maya was at her door in sweatpants and a winter coat, eyes wide with concern. Viva let her in, locked the deadbolt behind her, and told her everything. The clinic. The error. The pregnancy. Carlos Russo. Maya listened in silence, her expression moving from confused to horrified to disbelieving. This is insane, she finally said. This is actually insane. V, you need to call the police. And tell them what? That a fertility clinic accidentally inseminated me with a mobster's sperm? What are they going to do? Arrest him for being the victim of medical malpractice. Then call a lawyer. Sue the clinic. Get protection. From who? The Mafia. Viva laughed, sharp and bitter. Maya, do you understand what Dr. Chan told me? If Carlos Russo finds out, he'll take me. Take this baby. He doesn't care about consent. Doesn't care that I'm not just some surrogate he paid for. And if Montana finds out first, I'm dead. Either way I lose. So what are you going to do? Viva looked down at her hands, ordinary hands, scarred from years of navigating broken systems, trembling with fear but steady enough. I don't know. Dr. Chan wants me to fly to New York. Terminate. Take the money. Disappear. Is that what you want? The question hung in the air between them. Viva's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. A tiny cluster of cells. A mistake. A violation. but also impossibly a life. I don't know, she whispered. I grew up with nothing, Maya. No family. No safety. Just a system that moved me around like a chess piece. And I swore I'd never bring a child into this world unless I could give them everything I never had. But this baby didn't ask to be here. Didn't ask to be used as a weapon in some mafia war. And if I terminate, her voice broke. If I terminate, am I any different from the system that threw me away? Am I just another person deciding that this life isn't worth fighting for? Maya reached across the space between them and took Viva's hand. V, this isn't about being strong or making a statement. This is about your safety. Your life. I know. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But decide fast. Because if this Carlos Russo is who they say he is, he's not going to wait for you to figure it out. Viva nodded. She called in sick to work the first time in 3 years. Then she booked a flight to LaGuardia for the following evening. Dr. Chan had said to come immediately, but Viva needed 1 day. 1 day to think. To decide. To grieve or prepare or both. She spent that day cleaning her apartment like she might never come back to it. She wrote a letter to her supervisor, explaining her caseload in case she didn't return. She called her caseworker from her own time in foster care. The one good one, the woman who'd helped her get to college, and left a voicemail saying she loved her. By evening she was packed. 1 suitcase. Cash. Her phone. The pregnancy test, wrapped in tissue paper like evidence or talisman. She called an Uber to take her to O'Hare. Sat in the back seat watching Chicago blur past the windows. Her city, her home, possibly for the last time. The plane was scheduled to leave at 7:30 p.m. Viva never made it to the airport. Because at 6:47 p.m., there was a knock on her apartment door. She froze, hand on the doorknob, looking through the peephole. 3 men stood in her hallway. 2 were built like weapons, broad shoulders, hard faces, the kind of men who broke things for a living. The third was tall, dark-haired, sharp-featured. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. And when he looked directly at the peephole, directly at her, his eyes were the cold gray of a winter sky before a storm. Carlos Russo. He'd found her. Ms. Morrison. His voice carried through the door, accented with something European underneath the American English, Italian maybe. Smooth and controlled. My name is Carlos Russo. I believe we need to talk about your condition. Viva's heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape her body. She backed away from the door, hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Go away. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. I'm afraid I can't do that. I'll call the police. A pause. Then almost amused. And tell them what? That you're pregnant with my child after a medical error? Ms. Morrison, we both know the police can't help you. But I can. I don't want anything from you. You're carrying my heir. My bloodline. Whether you want something from me or not is irrelevant. You need protection. Montana DeMarco already knows about the clinic error. His men have been watching this building for the past 4 hours. The only reason you're still alive is because I got here first. The words hit like ice water. You're lying. Am I? Look out your window. Southwest corner. Black SUV with tinted windows. Montana's surveillance team. Viva didn't want to look. But she moved to the window anyway, pulled the curtain aside just enough to see. A black Escalade sat at the corner, engine running, exhaust visible in the February cold. He's waiting for you to leave, Carlos continued, his voice unnervingly calm. Waiting for you to make a run for it. And when you do, his men will take you. Not to kill you, not yet. To extract the baby. Montana has his own doctors. His own plans for the Russo heir. Viva's blood turned to ice. You're just trying to scare me. Yes, because you should be scared. Miss Morrison, I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't leave. I don't give up. And I don't lose. So you can open this door and let me protect you. Or you can run and let Montana's men take you. But either way, this conversation is happening. Tonight. Her mind raced through options, each one worse than the last. Call the police, who would take hours to respond and couldn't hold a mafia boss without charges. Run and risk Montana's men. Stay and let Carlos Russo into her home, into her life. No good choices, only terrible ones. Her hand moved to the deadbolt. She opened the door 6 inches, chain still in place. Carlos Russo stood there, and even through the gap, his presence was overwhelming. He was tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", with the kind of lean, dangerous build that suggested violence always simmering just beneath the surface. His dark hair was longer than the photos suggested, falling just past his collar. His eyes were gray, cold, assessing her like she was a problem to be solved. Behind him, his 2 men waited with the patient stillness of people who hurt others for a living. Miss Morrison. He didn't smile, didn't soften his expression, just looked at her with that calculating gaze. May I come in? No. Something flickered in those gray eyes, surprise maybe or respect. Then we'll talk in the hallway. But I promise you, Cara, this conversation is happening. She should have been terrified. Should have slammed the door and barricaded herself inside. Instead, she felt rage. White-hot, clarifying rage. You mean the baby your clinic put inside me without my consent? That condition? Yes. I didn't ask for this. I went in for a routine exam. I checked the box that said virgin because was. And now I'm pregnant with a stranger's child because someone at your fancy clinic couldn't tell 2 charts apart. His jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in his controlled facade. I know. And the person responsible has been dealt with. Dealt with. Permanently. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Did you kill them? I removed them from the situation. His eyes held hers. Ms. Morrison, I'm not here to debate the ethics of how I run my organization. I'm here because you're carrying my child. My only possible heir. And that makes you the most valuable and most vulnerable person in my world right now. I'm not your anything. Not yet. He stepped closer to the door. But Montana won't see it that way. To him, you're leverage. A way to destroy me. He'll take you, extract the child through cesarean section the moment it's viable, and dispose of you. That's not a threat. That's a fact. Viva wanted to tell him to leave. Wanted to believe she had options. But she looked past him to the hallway window, saw the black SUV still idling at the corner, and knew. She was trapped. Her hand moved to the chain. Hesitated. Then unhooked it. She opened the door. Carlos Russo stepped inside, and Viva's cramped apartment suddenly felt impossibly small. Carlos's men stayed in the hallway. He came in alone, moving through her space with the careful attention of someone who'd learned to assess threats in every environment. His eyes cataloged everything, the second-hand furniture, the case files stacked on the kitchen table, the children's drawings taped to the walls, the laptop still open to articles about medical malpractice. He stopped at the coffee table where the pregnancy test still sat, 2 pink lines faded but still visible. You kept it. Evidence, Viva said, arms crossed over her chest like armor. In case I need to sue the clinic. You won't need to sue. He turned to face her fully. Dr. Chen's facility will be compensating you significantly. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? To claim your property? To tell me what I'm going to do with my own body. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A flash of something that might have been pain or anger or both. I'm here to offer you a choice. A choice. Viva laughed, sharp and bitter. I'm pregnant with your child against my will. There's a rival mobster waiting outside to kidnap me. You've made it very clear I'm not safe anywhere. What choice do I have? More than you think. Carlos moved to her window, looked down at the street where Montana's SUV waited. I can't undo what happened. Can't give you back the violation of having this pregnancy forced on you. But I can give you options. I'm listening. He turned back to her. Option 1. I have my doctors terminate the pregnancy. You receive $5 million, a new identity, relocation to anywhere in the world you choose. Montana will eventually learn there's no heir, and you become irrelevant to him. You walk away from this and never see me again. Viva's breath caught. $5 million. A new life. Freedom. What's option 2? You carry the child to term. I provide complete protection, security, medical care, housing, whatever you need. When the baby is born, we negotiate custody. You remain part of the child's life, but so do I. Montana becomes a non-issue because the heir exists and is under my protection. So I become your prisoner. My ward. There's a difference. Is there? One implies force. The other implies partnership. He stepped closer. Miss Morrison, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking you to forgive what happened. I'm asking you to consider the child, the innocent party in all of this. That baby didn't ask to be conceived this way. Didn't ask to be used as a weapon in a territory war. But it exists. And it deserves parents who'll fight for it. I don't even know if I can be a parent, Viva said, her voice breaking. I grew up in foster care, Carlos. I know what it's like to be unwanted, to be passed around like a burden. I swore I'd never bring a child into this world unless I could give them everything I never had. And now you're pregnant with a Mafia heir, while working a social worker's salary in a one-room apartment. His voice softened slightly. I know your background, Ms. Morrison. I know you spent 12 years in Chicago's foster system. I know you put yourself through DePaul working night shifts. I know you advocate for children because you remember what it's like to have no one fight for you. Viva's eyes widened. You investigated me. Of course I did. You're carrying my child. I needed to know who you were. That's a violation. Everything about this situation is a violation. He interrupted, voice hard again. But we can't change the past. We can only decide what happens next. Viva looked at this man, this stranger, this criminal, this unexpected father of her unexpected child, and tried to find deception in his face. But all she saw was exhaustion. The same bone-deep tiredness she felt in her own body. Why does this matter so much to you? She asked quietly. You're rich. Powerful. You could adopt. Use a surrogate again. Why fight for this baby? Carlos was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw in a way that suggested he rarely let people see this side of him. Because 3 years ago, Montana DeMarco ordered a hit on me. His men shot me in an ambush outside my office. I survived, but the injuries left me infertile. The doctors said I'd never have biological children, so I froze my sperm and tried surrogates. 9 women. 9 failures. Every time I told myself it didn't matter. That legacy was just ego. That I didn't need children. He moved to the window again, his reflection ghostly in the glass. But then my father had a stroke last year, and my mother looked at me and said, when you die, what will be left of us? And I realized I have no answer. I built an empire, But what's the point if it dies with me? So I'm just an incubator for your legacy. No. He turned back to her, and his eyes held hers with unexpected intensity. You're the woman carrying the only family I'll ever have, and that makes you irreplaceable. Viva didn't give Carlos an answer that night. She told him she needed time to think, time he grudgingly gave her, though he made it clear his men would be stationed outside her building for protection. Montana's team left 20 minutes ago, he said as he prepared to leave. But they'll be back. You have 48 hours to decide, Ms. Morrison. After that, I'm moving you to a secure location whether you agree or not. Your safety isn't negotiable. Everything is negotiable when it's my body. His jaw tightened. Not when Montana wants you dead. Then he was gone, leaving behind his card and the scent of expensive cologne and the weight of an impossible choice. Viva spent the next 2 days in a fog of research and panic. She called Maya, who came over immediately and held her while she cried. She called a lawyer in Manhattan who specialized in reproductive rights, a woman who listened to the whole story and then said very carefully, Ms. Morrison, this is beyond medical malpractice. This is organized crime. Whatever you decide, make sure you survive it. She sat in her apartment, hand on her stomach, feeling the beginnings of something that might have been life or might have been imagination. She thought about the children she'd fought for in her work, the kids who'd been born into situations they didn't choose, who deserved advocates and safety and love, regardless of how they came into the world. She thought about her own childhood, the loneliness, the feeling of being disposable, and she thought about Carlos Russo's face when he talked about legacy, the raw vulnerability of a man who'd spent his life being dangerous, admitting he was afraid of dying alone. On the second night at 3 a.m. she made her decision. She called the number on his card. He answered on the first ring. Ms. Morrison, I'll come to New York, but I have conditions. A pause. She could hear the surprise in his silence. I'm listening. I stay with my friend Maya, not you. I control my own medical care. Your doctors can monitor the pregnancy, but I have final say on everything. I can leave any time I want. No locks, no guards keeping me prisoner. And I want it in writing that this child will know both of us. Not just you. Both. Another pause, longer this time. Then, agreed. Just like that. Ms. Morrison, I told you, I'm not interested in forcing you. I'm interested in partnership. If those are your terms, I accept them. When do we leave? My jet is fueled. I can have you in Manhattan by morning. Viva closed her eyes. Give me until tomorrow evening. I need to handle my cases, talk to my supervisor. I can't just disappear. Montana has been quiet for 2 days. One more day won't kill me. But leaving without closing my cases properly will destroy the kids who depend on me. I need to do this right. She heard something in his exhale that might have been respect. Tomorrow evening. I'll send a car at 6. I'll drive myself to the airport. A sound that might have been a laugh. Of course you will. The next day Viva went to work. She spent 8 hours transferring her active cases to other social workers, explaining that she had a family emergency and would be gone indefinitely. Her supervisor, a woman named Patricia who'd been in the system for 30 years, looked at her with knowing eyes. You're not coming back, are you? I don't know, Viva said honestly. Patricia squeezed her hand. Whatever it is, survive it. The kids need people like you. But they need you alive more than they need you martyred. At 5 p.m. Viva went home, packed one suitcase, left her apartment key with Maya. You're sure about this? Maya asked, helping her load the car. No, but I'm out of better options. Call me. Every day. If I don't hear from you, you'll what? Call the police on a Mafia boss. Maya's face was grim. I'll burn down his entire empire if he hurts you. They hugged, both crying, both knowing this might be the last time they saw each other as the people they'd been. Carlos's car, a black sedan with tinted windows and a driver who looked like he moonlighted as a bouncer, arrived at exactly 6 p.m. But Viva ignored it, got in her own car, and drove herself to a private airfield in Gary, Indiana, where Carlos waited beside a jet that probably cost more than her entire neighborhood. He watched her park, get out, pull her single suitcase from the trunk. He didn't smile, but something in his expression softened. You drove yourself. I told you I would. Most people don't keep their promises to me. I'm not most people. No, he agreed quietly. You're not. They flew to New York in silence, the jet's interior all leather and luxury that made Viva feel like she'd stepped into another world. Carlos worked on his laptop. Viva stared out the window at the clouds and wondered if she was flying toward salvation or destruction. When they landed at Teterboro, a car was waiting. But instead of taking her to his penthouse or some secure compound, Carlos gave the driver Maya's sister's address in Brooklyn, the friend Viva had stayed with during the conference. You meant it, Viva said, surprised. About letting me stay where I want. I don't make promises I can't keep. He handed her another card, this one with multiple numbers. My personal cell. My security team. My doctor. Call anytime for any reason. I'll have men stationed on your street, but they'll be invisible. You won't see them unless you need them. When will I see you? Tomorrow. First prenatal appointment. After that, he paused. As often as you'll allow. She studied his face in the dim car interior. Why do I feel like you're not as terrible as you should be? His smile was sad. Give it time, Ms. Morrison. I'm sure I'll disappoint you eventually. He left her at Maya's sister's doorstep, disappeared into the night like a ghost in an expensive suit. The first month was strange. Careful. Two people circling each other like dancers learning unfamiliar steps. Carlos kept his word. Viva stayed in Brooklyn with Maya's sister, Keisha, a nurse who asked no questions and kept her spare room ready. Carlos's security was invisible but present. She felt their watchful presence, saw the occasional shadow that moved too deliberately to be random. The prenatal appointments became their routine. Every week, Carlos would arrive in his black sedan, always on time, always carrying something small. A book about pregnancy, a smoothie from the place near the clinic, once a ridiculous stuffed elephant that made her laugh despite herself. For the baby, he'd said, almost embarrassed. We don't even know the sex yet. Elephants are gender neutral. The doctors confirmed everything was progressing normally. 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. Each ultrasound showed a growing form, a stronger heartbeat, the undeniable reality of life. At 16 weeks, they heard the heartbeat clearly for the first time. A rapid thump-thump-thump that filled the examination room. Viva watched Carlos's face transform. The cold control cracked completely. His hand gripped the edge of the examination table so hard his knuckles went white, and when he looked at the ultrasound screen, his eyes were wet. His voice broke. That's real. That's our baby, the doctor said gently. Carlos turned to Viva, and in that moment, she saw past the Mafia boss to the man underneath. Terrified, hopeful, desperately trying not to let himself feel too much in case it was taken away. She reached for his hand, squeezed it. He squeezed back. Something shifted between them in that moment. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something that might become partnership, trust, family. After the appointment, they walked through Midtown together. Carlos's security followed at a distance, and for a little while they were almost normal, just two people expecting a child, navigating the strange intimacy of shared biology. I was thinking, Carlos said quietly, about names. Already. I've been thinking about this for 3 years. Forgive me if I'm ahead of schedule. Viva smiled despite herself. Okay. What were you thinking? If it's a boy, Mateo, it was my grandfather's name, the man who built everything I inherited. If it's a girl, he paused. I don't know. I never let myself imagine having a daughter. We'll figure it out, Viva said, and meant it. At 20 weeks, they learned they were having a son. Carlos wept. Actually wept, his face in his hands, shoulders shaking with emotion he could no longer contain. Viva touched his shoulder, awkward and gentle, and felt her own tears falling. A boy. A son. Mateo. He's going to need us both, she said quietly. Not just your protection or my love. Both. Carlos looked at her with red eyes and something like wonder. I know. Montana made his move 3 weeks later. Not directly, Carlos's security was too good for that. But indirectly through threats and pressure. A bomb threat at Keisha's hospital. Anonymous calls warning Viva to leave New York. Suspicious vehicles circling her block. Carlos responded with controlled fury. Within 48 hours, Montana's operations were collapsing. Supply chains disrupted, allies turning, accounts frozen. It was precise surgical violence, and Viva tried not to think too hard about what Carlos was doing in the shadows. But Montana was desperate. And desperate men made reckless choices. The attack came at 24 weeks. Montana's men ambushed Carlos's car outside his office, the same location as the first attempt 3 years earlier. Gunfire. Chaos. Blood on Manhattan pavement. Viva got the call from Carlos's head of security. He's alive. Injured but alive. Montana's dead. It's over. She was at the hospital before she consciously decided to move. Found Carlos in a private room, bandaged and exhausted but intact. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. You came. Of course I came. She crossed to his bedside, hand instinctively moving to her stomach where their son kicked anxiously. You could have died. But I didn't. His hand covered hers, feeling their son's movement. I had too much to live for. Viva looked at this man, this killer, this father, this unexpected partner, and felt something crack open in her chest. I think I'm falling for you, she said. And I don't know what to do with that. Carlos's smile was tender and devastating. Feel it. That's all. Just feel it. She kissed him. Not desperately or dramatically, but gently. Promise. A beginning. We're going to be okay, she whispered against his mouth. All 3 of us. Yes, he agreed. We are. 3 months later, Mateo Carlos Morrison Russo was born at 3:47 a.m. on a humid August morning in Manhattan. 7 pounds 6 ounces. Perfect. Healthy. Loved beyond measure. 6 months after that, Viva and Carlos were married in a small ceremony at his family estate. She wore her mother's pearls. He wore a smile that made him look almost peaceful. Mateo slept through the entire thing, cradled in his grandmother's arms. And a year after that, Viva stood in the nursery of their brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. Not his world, not her world, but their world, watching Carlos teach their son to take his first steps. She kept that pregnancy test, tucked in Mateo's baby book alongside his hospital bracelet and first photograph. Someday she'd tell him the story. How his parents met through impossible chance. How violation became transformation. how the most unlikely love could grow from the most terrifying moments. But for now, she watched her husband and son and thought, some mistakes were always meant to be miracles. If this story touched you, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Share it with someone who needs to hear that even the most impossible beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. And subscribe for more stories that remind us that love doesn't always follow the rules. Sometimes it writes its own. Because in this world, every heartbeat hides a secret, every shadow holds a story, and sometimes the greatest love grows from the most unexpected beginning. Until next time, stay dangerous, stay passionate, and never stop believing in the impossible.